Chapter 2. Fundamentals of Circular Economy, the Limits of the Linear Economic Model and the Circular Economy Alternative. Circular economy is a system where materials never become waste and nature is regenerated. In a circular economy, products and materials are kept in circulation through processes like maintenance, reuse, refurbishment, remanufacture, recycling, and composting. The circular economy tackles climate change and other global challenges like biodiversity loss, waste, and pollution by decoupling economic activity from the consumption of finite resources. Ellen MacArthur Foundation, no date. Online resources, How to Build a Circular Economy. Ellen MacArthur Foundation, website. The foundation explores strategies to shift from a linear economy to a regenerative, waste-free system. Starting from the assumptions that simple and conventional economic models have overlooked the existing relationship between the economy and the environment, circular economy theories provide a useful framework to rethink the terms of this relationship in a systemic, comprehensive, and integrated way. Wadeley, 2018. Before delving into the benefits of a model based on the circular economy, it is first necessary to briefly recall the distinctions with the prevailing economic model. This refers to the take-make-waste system, Manicum Duraisamy, 2019, already mentioned in this book, which has proven to be unsustainable for life on this planet, as it is based on the assumption of infinite growth on a planet with irrevocably finite resources. It is a linear model of production and consumption, structured around the extraction, use, and disposal of resources, founded on the false premise that the world we inhabit is separate from the complex economic mechanisms that regulate it, as if life on this planet could unfold independently from the environmental devastation generated by an insatiable drive for economic growth, a model that ultimately prioritizes the well-being of a few. Conversely, the circularity promoted by the model discussed in this book rethinks the relationship between human activity and the environment in a positive way, aiming to challenge the long-lasting dualism embedded in our thought structures, an approach that has proven inadequate in addressing the environmental devastation and climate change that threaten our planet. If we consider the Earth as a closed system, the relationship between the economy and the environment becomes circular, as every input generated can serve as the starting point for another process, the exact opposite of a model that generates waste without reintegrating it into the production cycle, leaving it to decay and pollute the planet. These are the fundamental premises that define circular economy theories, as previously introduced in the first chapter of this book. The circular economy approaches encourage a rethinking of production and consumption patterns by promoting the use of waste and byproducts as valuable resources. Instead of being discarded, the residues from one industrial process can serve as raw materials for another, creating a more efficient and sustainable system that minimizes waste. Eco-efficiency versus eco-effectiveness, a paradigm shift. The cradle-to-cradle C2C approaches have provided a theoretical contribution to the concept of the circular economy, Wadeley, 2018. It is important to emphasize that within this theoretical framework, two approaches emerge that are similar yet very different at the same time: eco-efficiency and eco-effectiveness. Eco-efficiency is explicitly based on the well-known criterion of efficiency, which implies doing more with less, reducing negative impacts by improving production processes through resource optimization and waste reduction. Within this framework, there is no real rethinking or questioning of the production system. Rather, it is only a moderate and timid call to reduce the most harmful impacts. For example, we could imagine a company that produces plastic bottles and, in order to minimize material waste and maximize efficiency, chooses to reduce the thickness of the plastic. However, this does not change the fact that plastic is a material that is difficult to recycle, highly polluting, and potentially harmful to ecosystems. In this way, the company can comply with environmental regulations and respond to social pressures without questioning its business-as-usual model. Similarly, an automotive company that manufactures cars with more efficient engines and recycled materials is reducing resource consumption and emissions, but it is not in any way questioning a production model based on the use of fossil fuels, one of the major sources of CO2 emissions on our planet. In contrast, eco-effectiveness aims at a structural rethinking of socio-productive systems. Returning to the earlier example of the company that produces bottles, a solution aligned with this approach could be the production of compostable bottles made from materials whose natural decomposition does not negatively impact the surrounding environment, but instead serves as the starting point for reintegrating the material into the biological cycle of ecosystems. Alternatively, the aforementioned automotive company could promote a shift from individual car ownership to mobility sharing services, fundamentally redesigning urban transportation by reducing the overall number of cars needed. Within the eco-effective approach, the focus shifts towards enhancing positive impacts through environmental regeneration, for example, rather than merely slowing down or avoiding negative ones, as in the case of the eco-efficient approach. The goal is a radical rethinking of our socio-economic system. What is addressed in this case are the root causes of environmental degradation, rather than just its most visible and superficial effects. The principle that marks the transition from eco-efficiency to eco-effectiveness is waste equals food, Vaudelaire, 2018. This principle asserts the necessity for products and industrial processes to be designed in a way that allows for the continuous flow of nutrients within two different metabolisms, the biological and the technological. These metabolisms, in turn, correspond to two different types of products, known respectively as products of consumption and products of service. Vaudelaire, 2018. The first category refers to products made of biodegradable materials that, once used, become biological and nutritional substrates for other living organisms, thereby perpetuating the biological flow. A concrete example could be the production of compostable coffee pods made from biopolymers that break down into compost, becoming a resource that supports biological metabolism. The underlying principle of the product of service is the same, the reintegration of materials into a new production process that continually renews the technological cycle. Within this metabolism, non-biodegradable materials are designed to be recovered and reused indefinitely without any loss of quality. An example is the pay-per-lux business model developed by Philips, in which the company does not sell lamps or lighting systems, but provides a lighting service based on light consumption. The user pays for the service, while the company retains ownership of the lamps, taking care of maintenance, upgrades, and material recycling. Essentially, products of service create a model in which users pay for access to a specific function without owning the product, thereby ensuring its long-term reuse. Performance economy, extending the life of products. As in the hypothetical example of the automotive company offering mobility-sharing services, the concept of service is also central to another fundamental theory, the performance economy, proposed by Walter Stahl. This theory, moving away from the incentive to constantly produce new goods, instead focuses on product life extension through processes of reuse, remanufacturing, and recycling, which constitute the three loops of this economic system, Vaudelaire, 2018. The reuse loop is considered the most efficient strategy because by allowing products to be used again in their original form, it does not require major transformations, thus saving energy, labor, and materials. One sector that has greatly benefited from adopting this principle is the fashion industry, through the proliferation of second-hand markets and the promotion of platforms like Vinted, which enable users to buy second-hand clothes, thereby reducing the demand for new garments from fast fashion companies. The remanufacturing loop involves the repair, refurbishment, and upgrading of products to restore them to their original condition. In the electronics and technology sector, there is an increasing trend toward offering refurbished smartphones and computers, where faulty components are replaced and devices are resold at discounted prices with warranties. In this way, the remanufacturing process restores full functionality to a product that would otherwise be discarded, significantly reducing resource extraction. Moreover, the service itself becomes the central element of this process. The business model shifts from selling products to selling performance. Last, the recycling loop involves breaking down products into raw materials to be used again in manufacturing processes. Examples include the use of recycled materials such as aluminum to produce cans, which reduces the energy required for producing new aluminum. However, recycling is less efficient than the previous loops because it still requires high energy input and may lead to material degradation, presenting limited circularity in many cases. In fact, downcycling means that after a few cycles, the material can no longer be recycled and will eventually become waste. It is possible to frame the emphasis on recycling as an approach that aims at eco-efficiency rather than eco-effectiveness, as it focuses on slowing down the most negative effects in terms of energy consumption, but does not seek to fundamentally change the socio-productive model that drives environmental degradation. Not surprisingly, it is the most widely adopted principle by large multinational corporations, which often attempt to greenwash their practices to meet social and environmental pressures. In fact, strategies aimed at eco-efficiency are still anchored in the principle of productivity growth and place exclusive emphasis on the well-known 3Rs model, which will be described below. The role of R strategies in resource management. The 3Rs, reduce, reuse, recycle, constitute a fundamental concept of sustainable waste management, a minimal strategy to address negative environmental impacts. However, over the years, this model has proven insufficient to tackle the complexity of the issue, evolving with new approaches and becoming part of a more detailed and complex hierarchy for sustainable resource management. Interactive video, the importance of the 3Rs, an overview. In fact, this model has been criticized for not addressing the root causes of environmental degradation, aligning instead with the previously mentioned strategies aimed at eco-efficiency. As a result, it does not challenge the business-as-usual approach, but rather disguises it with weak green initiatives whose only objective is to slow down environmental damage. Given these premises, the R strategies model, 9Rs, has expanded the original 3Rs, configuring itself as a hierarchical tool for visualizing the different stages of resource use and waste management within a circular economy system. Within this more complex model, the 3Rs are placed at different levels in the hierarchy, reflecting a different order of priority based on the potential sustainability of the practices involved. According to some scholars, Sabur, Forster, and Putza 2022, the higher-tier R strategies, refuse, rethink, reduce, and reuse, should be prioritized over practices such as recycling or recovery, which still require high energy consumption due to the industrial processes needed to transform materials into new resources. The top strategy in the hierarchy is refuse, which aims to prevent waste and resource consumption at the source by eliminating the individual need for a product. For example, using reusable bottles instead of single-use plastic ones reduces the demand for oil extraction required to produce plastic and transport it, significantly mitigating the associated environmental impact. The second strategy is that of rethink, which entails an innovation of product design and usage, encouraging a reevaluation of how products are used to enhance sustainability. An example is shared mobility services, which aim to reduce the individual need for car ownership by shifting users from owning a product to paying for a service, as previously mentioned. The third principle in the hierarchy is reduce, which focuses on minimizing material and energy inputs in product manufacturing and consumption. An example is the production of electric vehicles with lighter and more efficient batteries, which reduce the extraction of lithium and cobalt necessary for their production. Finally, the principle of reuse aligns with the performance economy model and focuses on extending the lifespan of various products that would otherwise be discarded and left to deteriorate. However, It is important to highlight that the interpretation of the ranking of these principles within the hierarchy depends on the inevitably situated perspectives of scholars and the corporate interests of companies that choose to adopt certain strategies over others to reduce their environmental impact. What unites the R strategies model and the performance economy is the emphasis on the concept of service, which redefines user behavior while deprioritizing recycling for the reasons already mentioned. In fact, smaller and localized loops focused on reuse and remanufacturing are more efficient and offer numerous benefits compared to global-scale recycling, including energy savings, lower transportation costs, and job creation. Economic, environmental, and social benefits of CE systems. In the following paragraph, we are going to delve into the potential benefits that the adoption of CE principles could entail. The shift of economic activity from resource-intensive manufacturing to labor-intensive services, such as reuse, repair, and remanufacturing, creates new employment opportunities at a local and/or regional level, while simultaneously reducing the resource consumption that offshoring to low-cost production countries would entail. This presents a win-win solution for both the workforce and the environment. Woutelet, 2018. In fact, it is well documented that offshoring comes with high social and environmental costs, negatively impacting the environment due to lower environmental standards and increased emissions from global transportation, as well as harming the workforce, which is often exploited with low wages, unsafe working conditions, and little to no labor union protection. In the linear economic model, where economic growth depends on unlimited resource extraction, automation and efficiency are prioritized, leading to job losses as human labor is replaced by machines. In contrast, a circular performance economy prioritizes human labor over material consumption, requiring skilled workers to provide services to users, thus generating new potentialities for job creation. Woutelet, 2018. Considering what has been discussed so far, it is possible to reconceptualize the three loops of the performance economy as job-generating, as they create new employment opportunities in sectors that offer new types of services. A concrete example of a performance-based business model is Michelin's pay-per-kilometer tire leasing service, which provides truck fleets with tires as a service rather than a product. Michelin, no date. This model reduces costs by integrating tire retreading and maintenance, ensuring optimal performance while minimizing waste and resource consumption. At the same time, selling a service instead of products, where the company retains ownership rather than the individual consumer possessing the final product, benefits both parties involved. Companies are incentivized to design durable and repairable products. Consumers pay for access to a service, reducing their environmental impact. From an economic perspective, continued ownership is cost-efficient. Services such as reuse, repair, and remanufacture, which do not require the transfer of ownership that traditional product possession would imply, save double transaction costs. Furthermore, the shift from a product-based model to a service-based business model requires a higher demand for skilled workers, leading to the hiring of technicians, specialists, and quality control experts, which could contribute to increased job security on a regional level. From an environmental standpoint, shifting towards a CE system mitigates the overexploitation of natural resources and reduces pollution. By prioritizing reuse, remanufacturing, and repair over the continuous extraction and production of new materials, this model significantly lowers CO2 emissions. Additionally, relocating economic activities to local and regional levels decreases the need for long-distance transportation, further reducing the carbon footprint. The extension of product life cycles also plays a key role in minimizing waste, as fewer products end up in landfills, limiting soil and water contamination. Moreover, reducing pollution and toxic waste leads to healthier living conditions, improving overall health and well-being. This shift can be particularly impactful in urban and industrial areas where air and water pollution significantly affect public health, connecting directly with issues of social equity. In sectors such as fashion and electronics, where waste generation is particularly problematic, circular strategies can prevent the depletion of critical raw materials and help preserve biodiversity. Circular economy in action. Interactive video. Fashion industry and circular economy. YouTube. Numerous industries have already benefited, and can further benefit, from embracing circular economy principles. The fashion industry, for instance, is a prime example. The circular fashion business operates as a continuous cycle of improvement, where garments remain in circulation for as long as they retain their highest value. Anu Prerna, 2025. The previously mentioned 9 Rs model allows us to visualize and apply the principles of the circular economy in this sector, highlighting the numerous benefits that can arise on multiple fronts. Here below, we will mention some of them. Starting from the awareness that we consume more garments than we actually need, the refuse principle encourages us to reject the purchase of new clothes that are unnecessary. In this sense, prioritizing designing for durability in clothing products reduces the demand driven by compulsive and continuous purchasing of new garments, which generates an incalculable amount of waste. The reuse principle invites us to recognize that what we no longer need but is still in good condition should not be thrown away but rather passed on to new consumers. As we have already mentioned, establishing platforms for buying and selling secondhand clothes can potentially reduce the demand for disposable garments from fast fashion. Regarding refurbish, restoring an old piece of clothing to return it to its original functionality can potentially decrease the need for new materials, thereby reducing waste and CO2 emissions. Patagonia, for instance, through its Wornwear program, repairs and resells used clothing, significantly extending product lifespan and fostering consumer loyalty through sustainability-focused services. Batten, 2020. Similarly, remanufacturing, which entails building a new product by using the parts from discarded clothes, leads to a potential optimization of waste use and a reduction in resource extraction. Mud Jeans, a Dutch brand, implements this by offering a lease model for jeans, encouraging customers to return worn-out items so that the materials can be recycled into new denim garments, saving water and raw materials while promoting circularity. Circular X, 2020. In this sense, developing innovative technology that transforms old clothing into new, high-quality fibers for sustainable textile production is a strategy that can be adopted and represents a new potential sector for job creation. Another principle is repurpose, which involves giving an existing item a new function without altering its original structure, thus extending the lifespan of objects. For example, some fashion companies have started to use their dead stock fabrics as packaging instead of discarding them. To conclude this chapter and summarize what has been discussed so far, it can be stated that the circular economy framework addresses different components holistically, avoiding a binary perspective and making sustainability in all its facets, environmental, social, and economic, its core principle. Extending product life cycles or redefining ownership as service consumption mitigates environmental impact, reducing waste and conserving resources while simultaneously fostering economic resilience through the creation of new job opportunities in various sectors. Developing a local and circular service-based economy can improve working conditions, reduce dependence on non-renewable resources, and support a fairer and more sustainable production model.